Welcome back, Switch 2 fans, and there's one issue, if there is one issue, my biggest pet peeve with the Nintendo Switch 2, and that is the analog triggers it doesn't have. Now, if you don't know what analog triggers is, you've obviously played other consoles, right? Consoles that have triggers that you could pull down, and the game, in the system, the console can detect how hard you're pressing down, and it's especially useful for games like racing games. Shooter games, and hell, even Nintendo had analog triggers for the longest time. Look at the GameCube, look at the Nintendo 64. Analog triggers that have, trigger sensitivity, have been a thing since gaming began, since PlayStation 1, since Nintendo 64, GameCube, etc. And for whatever reason, with the Switch 1, they didn't include them then, and it's one of my biggest hopes and wishes for the Switch 2 is that they would add those full-sized analog triggers that can detect how far you're pulling it down, right? Well, bad news, Switch 2 still doesn't have them, and what's even more egregious in my opinion is that they don't even include analog triggers in the Pro controller, the new Pro controller, which is obviously a generational bump over the older one. But yeah, it basically means racing games, shooter games, and games that require, a little bit of sensitivity, caressing the controller, whether it's the throttle, the brakes, and specifically racing games. I would love to have seen Forza racing games, especially with Microsoft now putting their games on other platforms. I would love to have seen a bunch of fully featured racing games like Forza, Horizon, etc. on the Switch 2, and I think they would have run amazingly well on the Switch 2, but we're not going to see that because no analog triggers. But Nintendo's finally explained why they didn't include analog triggers, and I want to know in the comment section whether you agree with them. But before we get into the video fully, please click the like, subscribe, click the bell icon. It really helps out. I know everyone asks, but it makes a huge difference. It really does. Check the links down below in the video description for all the best Switch 2 accessories to get you hyped up and get ready for the Switch 2 when you do get one in your hands. And possibly even more importantly, check out our Switch 2 24-hour, 7-day-a-week stock tracking stream for the Switch 2. When pre-orders go live next month and bots and scalpers are out in full force, you want something that will alert you when it becomes available, right? Something that plays an alarm. It's going to be a silent stream. It's going to shoot off an alarm when the Switch 2 does come back into stock. So please head over there, hit the like on it, and check on it from time to time. We're going to be removing the Nintendo Direct, which is playing in a loop right now, and instead put up a stock tracking stream, which is silent except for when it does come in to stock, when it's available for pre-order, when it comes back into stock, which will be in waves, no doubt, from Best Buy, Target, Amazon, etc. So please check this stream out, pop over on it, like it really helps out. So Nintendo, this is from Game Rant, Nintendo explains why the Switch 2 controllers do not have analog triggers. Let's go see why. So the Switch 2's controllers won't have analog triggers, and some of Nintendo's top hardware experts have explained why. Switch 2's Joy-Con 2 controllers have a few upgrades to set them apart from their predecessors on the original Switch. Instead of a rail system, the new Switch controllers connect to the tablet with magnets, something that Nintendo actually considered for the original Switch at one point. There's also a new C button that controls the console's new game chat feature, and the individual Joy-Con 2 controllers can be placed sideways and used as a mouse. I think that is absolutely amazing that they've built that into the Switch 2. The Switch 2 is essentially functions like a little gaming PC at this point, which I think is awesome. It's a nice little addition. But again, no analog triggers. So for those who prefer a more traditional gaming experience, we'll be able to pick up the Switch 2's Pro controller, which was unveiled during the same Nintendo Direct, or revealed the console's price and release date. This too has few upgrades from its counterpart on the original Switch. 3.5mm audio jack for headphones, GL/GR buttons on its grips that can be mapped to other buttons. However, neither of these Nintendo Switch 2 controller options will have analog shoulder buttons, instead keeping the original digital triggers for the original Switch. So basically, as I said, basically the difference between digital triggers is digital triggers don't give you any leeway in between, right? It's either you're clicking it down or it's off. You're not clicking it or you're clicking it. On or off, on or off. Whereas analog triggers give you that little bit of nuance, especially for racing games if you're feathering the throttle, being tricky with the brakes in a racing game to try and skid and go into drifts and stuff like that. And again, there's a whole variety of different games that take advantage of that, like being able to control how much you want to pull back a bow if you're shooting arrows or something, how much you want to control that pullback. Fun little things that we've all taken for granted for decades now in gaming, that we use the triggers for, at least analog triggers. We don't have that as an option, neither on the Pro controller or the Joy-Cons themselves, and I think this is a colossal mistake. Not for everyone. A lot of people don't really care, honestly, but I'm one of those people that do care. I like to have options as far as the games that I play, and being able to play racing games and enjoy them on the Switch too, and not just, have my foot fully on the gas or off the gas, right? With these digital triggers. So it really bothers me. Now, it might not bother you, but It bothers me, and it bothers a bunch of other people too. So Switch 2 producer Koichi Kawamoto and technical director Tetsuya Saki explains why this is in a recent interview with Venture B. Sasaki admitted that it was partially due to some very fussy developers preferring digital shoulder buttons, while Kawamoto said that his team decided that the instant input of digital triggers was a better fit for the Switch 2 over the brief lag that comes with analog ones. And that is there's not really much lag with analog triggers, honestly. You could set the sensitivity in the software options. You know, you could have it to where even if you just tap it, or you don't have to pull the trigger all the way down. Even if you just tap it to where it registers any input, you could have it be on like that if you want. In most systems, like the Steam Deck, you could do that to where you so much as just tap it and it should, you know, register an input on or off if you want to. There's also little controller trigger stops that you can get, little switches that basically lock, you know, whether you want your triggers to go down all the way, whether you want them to stop at a certain point, and feel like digital triggers. There's ways they could have done that rather than just omitting analog triggers altogether. I'm not going to listen to their excuse and say there was a brief lag with the original analog triggers. It doesn't seem to have impacted any other console in the history of consoles, right? Didn't impact N64, didn't impact GameCube. Certainly hasn't held PlayStation back with the PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4, PS5, and inevitably the PS6. And it's never hindered Xbox or any other console manufacturer. So I don't believe this for a second. Now, in the article also says, in contrast to both the Switch and its upcoming successor, both the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S use analog triggers for their controllers, as does Valve's Steam Deck handheld. Many players prefer the use of analog triggers for certain genres of genres like racing games, due to them being able to sense how far back the player is pulling them. While the standard Nintendo Switch 2 Joy-Con 2 and Pro controllers will instead use a single press digital shoulder button, the re-released Nintendo GameCube controller will presumably retain the original version's analog triggers due to how many classic GameCubes utilize them. In other words, Nintendo's also recently confirmed that the Switch 2 controllers and Joy-Cons will not have Hall effect joysticks, and we know they've actually used Hall effects. If you don't know what Hall effect sticks are, basically they use magnets to detect when you're pulling them, and it eliminates the possibility that you'll get joystick drift. Obviously a massive issue on the Switch, one that Nintendo got sued over and had to obviously settle with the people suing them and provide Joy-Con replacements for those that needed them. It was a massive pain in the ass, and they know Hall effect sensors exist. They used them in the recent Nintendo alarm clock that they just released that had a Hall effect sensor in it, so we kind of assumed that they might have put one in the new Switch 2, but they didn't for whatever reason. Nintendo being Nintendo, right? And it is kind of ironic that they're putting a full analog trigger in the re-released Nintendo GameCube controller, which is kind of weird, right? In other news, Nintendo also recently confirmed that Switch 2 controllers won't have Hall effect sticks. Yep, we just talked about that, and this would have helped avoid the wear and tear that led to joystick drift on the original Switch, and a lot of other devices as well. And I just want to echo this sentiment from Paragon Network here, where he quoted them saying, Nintendo also said that some developers prefer digital triggers. Your consumers don't. Maybe instead of listening to developers, maybe you should listen to your consumers instead, the people that support the console. That's just me. Let me know if you disagree or you agree. Anyways, guys, I'm Blaze2K. We cover Switch 2 every day on this channel. We've obviously got the 24-hour stock tracking stream to help you get your hands on a Switch 2 when pre-orders do open and when they restock and whatnot. But yeah, let me know in the comment section how you feel. Please like, subscribe, click the bell icon. Obviously, it really helps out. It supports. You know it does. And thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Have a great Monday. Have a great rest of your week. Tell me what you know and what you think in the comment section about this. Obviously, it's a pain in the butt for me. I love racing games, and I want the Switch 2 to be as capable as it can be in a whole variety of genres, right? I love how we're going to get RTS games like Civilization on the Switch 2 and be able to use it, like, you know, use the Joy-Con as a mouse and really just elevate the Switch 2 and help us enjoy other genres that we maybe would never have dreamed of playing on the Switch 2. I just wish they didn't throw racing game enthusiasts under the bus with this and just included analog triggers, Nintendo. I really wish they did. Maybe we'll get Switch 2 OLED at some point in a couple of years that maybe includes analog triggers. I really hope we do. But until then, this sucks. Anyways, guys, I'm Blaze2K. See you in the next one. Check the links down below for some cool deals, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good week.
Let's go.